I feel like the most important thing to do is always hit record before we even get going, because it never fails. We get started and then it's like, oh shit, I haven't hit record.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no worries.
Dude, I know we didn't have that much time to talk, but obviously do my research as soon as I got back, and like we're part of the same community. You're coming, like we had like a brief interaction, and you've got this long career working in soft. So not only are we going to dig in to the amazing organization that is Operation Motorsport, but Jason Leach, welcome to your episode, because I'm going to pick your brain about your transition, because this whole experiment is about being able to reach out and find individuals that have gone through it, made it out the other side, and are like, hey, I survived. Not only did I survive, I thrived. I found my calling. I found great organizations. So I'm going to just dig deep into your story, man. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, man. Daddy, I really appreciate it. I'm glad we got to meet at the SOCOM Warrior Care conference there in Orlando. And thanks for just helping tell people stories. And really, I'm just here. Ask away, right? I'll share as little or as much as you'd like, and we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, well, let's start off with Operation Motorsport, because I have never, since I started this project, since I've started collecting resources, I have not found anything like what you guys are doing, which is, and it's my podcast, so we can cuss and swear as much as we want, which is fucking awesome.
Oh, that's all. Thanks. Yeah. So Operation Motorsport, we believe in the power of motorsports as a diversionary therapy tool for medically retired and wounded service members, either here in the United States and Canada. We were founded in 2017 by Diesel Lauder and his wife, Tiffany Lauder. Diesel was about 35-year Canadian Army guy, parachute rigger. And they got introduced to an organization called Mission Motorsport in the UK. Now, Mission Motorsport is similar to us in that, though, Mission Motorsport uses motorsports for medically retired or releasing service members, but their focus is on finding work opportunities or employment opportunities at the end of their program. And they also have gotten involved with a lot of original equipment manufacturers or OEMs there. And that's kind of what Mission Motorsports focuses. Well, go back to like 2016. Diesel and Tiffany were introduced to Mission Motorsport through what's called the Race of Remembrance. Now, what this is it takes place over our Veterans Day weekend, their Remembrance Day weekend in November. And it's a 12-hour endurance race. It's really an excuse for people in the veteran community to get together, provide support to each other, remember the sacrifices of the service members and their families for all their years of service or whatever may have transpired. And what's really cool, though, about that race is on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock in the morning, coincide with Armistice Day. And the race is red flagged. It's paused. And if you're a serving member, you're asked to don your dress uniform. If you are a veteran, you're asked to don your headgear and your medals. And they do a wreath laying ceremony. And it's very moving. It takes about 30 minutes in pit lane, and it's just there's a choir, there's a service. It's a healing opportunity and support opportunity. I mean, you see veterans and service members leaning on each other, and just that level of support is so critical. And we all see that, right? We just happen to see it in we're using motorsports as that way.
Yeah.
So they were introduced to that. They come back from this event and they think, holy crap, there's nothing like this in North America. And they see that motorsports, we're all adrenaline junkies in some shape or fashion, whether you're skydiving, whether you're, running ATVs out in the desert, whether you're scuba diving, we all come from that background, specifically in the soft community. Right.
Yep.
And that's missing. That's a missing piece in our lives when we take the uniform off and we leave the service, because now we're probably stuck behind a computer or we're in the house. We got to go find whatever that is, and it's either you have a new hobby or you have a new interest, but you've got to go develop whatever that looks like. And so there's the adrenaline side of it, but more importantly, there's the team. There's the purpose and the identity, or really purpose, identity, and team. So we put it in motorsports terms. We've all heard of a pit crew, right? We've all heard of the pit box and all that. If you're involved in motorsports, and also purpose, identity, and team. So that purpose, what do we do next? What drives us? What motivates us? What helps us get up out of bed, and move forward, right? That identity, whether you wore a uniform, I mean, we all served, right? In some cases you wear a uniform, in some cases you don't, depending on the operational environment. But that identity of your tribe, right?
Yes.
And really we all get into that in some shape or fashion. I don't care if you're artillery, infantryman, SOF, logistics, aviation, there's that tribe, right? And then, team, you support the person to your left or your right. We were all indoctrinated to some extent in the military that it's not an individual effort, it's a team effort. Even when we talked about writing our OERs and NCOERs and whatnot, it was, what did you do to enable the team? Or what did that individual do to enable the team and the mission, not themselves, right? And none of us like getting awards, really. Those were usually for individual things, but more importantly, it was about supporting the team and the mission, right? So there's those three tenets: purpose, identity, and team. So then Tiffany and Diesel saw that and then said, we can do this here. We can create a program. And that's what they did. They started in Brighton, Ontario, and then quickly, incorporated in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, and through one of our good partners, a guy by the name of Greer Martin, who's now a retired JAG, airborne JAG guy, was also very instrumental in the early days. And we just use motorsports. We use sports car racing to let that service member that's medically released or retired or is a veteran and has a VA rating. You can still have purpose, you can still have an identity, you can still have a team. It's just in a new environment. And it's really cool to see. We're active in the IMSA, or International Motorsports Association. SRO is another sports car racing series here in North America, and then FEL Motorsports up in Canada. So we use 3 series, very small organization. We try to get at least 10 service members or veterans into the event at each race. We are not a one and done. And this is not to take away from those who are out there doing the hunting trips or the fishing trips or things like that, right? But if you come into our motorsports immersion program, you could be with a race team for up to 2 race seasons.
Wow.
So you're going from race to race to race. There's no geographical limitation. If you're at Fort Liberty and you need to go to Sonoma, California, and you met me, I just come back from Sonoma, California for the Orlando engagement. We'll get you out there. We work with various other nonprofits like Fisher House to help fund the air flight, the flights and the travel. The race teams help provide lodging. They provide care and feeding. They give that team uniform. So if you walk around through the paddock, you would never know that one of our members is a veteran because they're wearing a crew shirt. They're wearing, the crew uniform, right? It's just such a powerful program. And it's so cool. And I'll pause there and let you help drive the conversation. Otherwise, I'll talk for the entire time, and I might miss some of the stuff you want to focus on.
This it's blowing my mind because nothing I have it's like nothing I've come across. Everything like you said, not to knock the hunting trips, not to knock all the outdoor excursions. It's you go out there, you spend a weekend, you reconnect, but to be engaged in something where you have a call to action where you're like, hey, we're not done with this. After this event, we're going to do this next race. We're going to come back. That is something that's powerful. It's giving you that ability to like look forward to something.
Exactly.
That is needed. There's so many veterans I talk to and come across. It's like, man, I go to work and, I've got a couple guys who drink beers and hang out and maybe I'll go to the kids' softball game. But it's not their thing. It's not something they can own and look in their calendar and see that it's moving closer to the next race, to the next event. It's like, oh man, I'm getting excited.
It's like when we would come back off deployments, right? I mean, how many of us are like, okay, cool. I'm home. I got to reset, reconnect with the family as best as I can. Usually we were the disruptors because they had their own, they figured out how to work and live without us because we were gone for so long or our op tempo was so high. Yeah. But then we are also looking to get back out there on the next mission, get back out there on the next deployment, because that was part of our identity. That was part of our team. We wanted to be back in that purpose or that mission to get after it. Sports car racing is the same thing. It's just a different environment. And hopefully nobody's shooting at you.
Things have gone very sideways.
Yes.
And I want to hit this up right now because I know there's a lot of individuals out there. They're the cold trickles who watch racing, who are avid fans, but they don't know anything about cars.
Yeah.
And how does that program answer that? Because I know that individuals, there's somebody listening. Well, I wouldn't be able to take part in this because I don't know anything about vehicles.
Okay, so I'll focus on two things here. One, we are not putting people in the race seat. Okay, that is not happening, right? The cars we are working around, the teams we are working around, they're operating on $1 million budgets for the race season, right? These cars are hundreds of thousands of dollars, let alone all the equipment and everything. Like the skill level to get into one of these cars, you need two things. Well, you need two things, right? You either need to have a lot of skill, and then you're a good marketer. You can go find sponsorship. You bring money to the team. Yeah. Or you see this in some race series called gentleman drivers, where they've got deep pockets and they use racing as their hobby, right? Yeah. And they're paying for their seat. They have skill, don't get me wrong, because that's how they get competitive. And frankly, some of the people I'm thinking about are like CEOs of big tech companies, right? Yeah. You don't get to that level of success without having that drive, that desire, that the ability to win, right? In business. Now they're bringing that concept and that mind frame to the racing world because it's a new avenue for them. Again, most of these guys are adrenaline junkies as well in some shape or fashion. So let's say right off the bat, we're not putting people in the race seat. Yeah. In the North American events, I can talk about Wales here in a second, but we put people on as crew members. No previous skill sets or no previous experience required. You just have to have the right mind frame. You have to, you're not going to come in and just hang out with a team to watch. You are going to be a crew member. A lot of it's OJT. You could be learning how to do tires first, right? And some people kind of look at that and went, I'm just cleaning tires. I'm prepping tires or whatever. Okay, let's be honest. The tires are the only thing that actually touch the ground with the race car. If any other part of the race car touches the ground, you've had a bad day. So, the tire technician guys are so important with setting those pressures and getting everything balanced right and doing what needs to be done to help that driver perform. Because that's what the driver can control. And racing is all about shifting weight. That's really what it boils down to, is shifting the weight better than your competitor. And then, so you might start off with tires, and then you might move on to mechanics. You might move on to data. You might move on to fueling, fire bottle. And again, people look at fire bottle as something that's kind of like, that doesn't really much of a skill set. Well, when that driver's on fire, you're going to become his best friend because you've got the fire bottle to put him out, right? Yeah. So every job is critical. That's on the race team side. Now, but there's other things. There's marketing, there's photography, videography, social media, hospitality, fan engagement. We had a retired Army E9 a few years ago out of Fort Bragg, and it was still Fort Bragg back then. Yeah. That came out of, he was a cook, came out of food services, right? He was not really interested in racing, but he liked the hospitality piece. We worked with him and we worked with Lamborghini and their hospitality team, and we put him in with the hospitality team because racing is a business. These corporations, these organizations, they use the race weekends as B2B development. So, and opportunities, and in addition to fan engagement and all that, because without the fans, racing doesn't exist. But, we took a guy and we put him in to be part of the Lamborghini hospitality tent, and that's what he did, and he loved it, right? Yeah. We have somebody working right now in race control. And let me tell you, we've all been in those fobs. We've all been in the talks, in various deployments. Race control in sports car racing, very similar. You come in, it's the giant wall of computer screens with all the data coming in, all the different camera angles across the racetrack. So race control can see what's going on because these racetracks are 2.3 plus miles long, 2.5 plus miles long. They have to have eyes everywhere to see what's going on and regulate and monitor the race for infractions or overtaking and data and whatnot. And we have a guy that he was a retired medically released Army major that worked with race control for 2 years. At the end of it, he was offered a paid position with race control.
I was just going to say, even though it's not an employment program, it's exposure. It's putting you in connection with industry partners, people in the business. Like, that's powerful. That's one of the things that I've realized now. There's a lot of individuals that are like, hey, I'm going to bring in some soft guys to volunteer to set up this event, and I'm going to get you around and get you to meet and greet with individuals within all sorts of industries. That's a huge catalyst for getting that next step up, that next job.
It is.
That
It's
is
all
powerful.
about. It's all about building your network. It's all about, sometimes it's more about who you know than what you know, right?
Yep.
And then again, those transferable military skills. I don't care where you were at in the military. We all have transferable skills. You demonstrate that. And when you're talking about an environment that relies on the individual to be competent in their job, to support that person to your left and your right, we learn all that from basic day one and basic training. And those are skills that are easily desirable inside of motorsports.
Yeah, absolutely. At first glance, you think, okay, this is going to be guys in the pit, but the fact that you open it up to so many different aspects, that is so appealing. That is like the coolest thing, because it's not just the guys on the pit. It's like being able to see the entire operation.
Yes.
Like, that is insane. What is the return rate? How many individuals that come and stay engaged in the program?
I would say probably 85+%, right? Once somebody steps into the motorsports immersion program, they want to be there, right? Mm-hmm. And then on the backside of that, that's an individual decision. That's an individual choice, because when you talk about, and the racing we do, the racing we're involved in, they race on average once a month from January till October.
Okay.
So it's not like NASCAR where it's like every week.
Yeah.
We're about once a month. Across North America, with one track in Canada, and I'm just speaking to the U.S. side. And the Canada program's a little bit different. They tend to condense their races into a smaller program, smaller calendar. I think a lot of it has more to do with weather up there than anything else.
Yeah.
But the return rate, though, on people who come back and maybe get a job opportunity is fairly high. But some people decide they love the program. It gave them the ability to take the next step, whatever their goals might be. And they decide, you know what, there's two things to consider in racing. One, you're gone, again, and that can be tough. And typically you fly in on a Wednesday and you leave on a Sunday night or a Monday, so you're on location for about 5 to 6 days. And then second, there's not a ton of money for the individual in racing, right? Because all the money goes into the car, all the money goes into the team equipment, all the money goes into the expenses of getting from point A to point B, all the consumables of brakes, tires, fuel, all that stuff, right? So, and in sports car racing too, what most people don't realize, the stuff that we're involved in, and we're at the top level of sports car racing in North America, but most of the pit crew guys are all independent contractors. They don't go back. They don't go back to a shop like you see with a NASCAR or IndyCar team or F1. They go back to their job, whatever their job might be, Monday through Friday. Now, most people bounce around within motorsports some shape or fashion because it's their passion, but not everybody does. I had a good friend of mine who owned a roofing company up in like New Hampshire. And he would come in once a month and be a tire changing guy, and just loved being around cars. Was very confident, but his day job, frankly, was a roofer.
Yeah, and that speaks to the idea of understanding what your passion and your purpose is, and maybe it's your 9 to 5 is your 9 to 5, and you get to that. You take time off and you get to go do what you're absolutely passionate about. And I think that's a lot of us that are missing that. They have that great job, but they're looking for that passion. They're looking for that thing that fuels them. And it's right there. If you're if somebody loves racing, loves cars, have been in that culture, which there's a lot of guys, especially in the Fort Bragg area, come to find out. I didn't know that.
Well, a lot of NASCAR down there, right? I'm trying to convert a lot of those guys from NASCAR, coming to sports car racing. It's a little bit different environment.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because the culture that we I instantly made the joke when we first met about Days of Thunder. That's the American.
Yeah, we started quoting it back and forth,
And sports car racing, what's that culture like? And you've already talked a little bit about it, but what's like the big shift in that?
It's the marketing side, right? It's much smaller venue. It's not as popular. You don't see it advertised as much. Most if you want to go watch a race, you've got to go find it on a streaming service or online. Now you will get snippets of it on national TV, like the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and that kicks off before the Daytona 500 does. I mean, sports car racing starts before NASCAR does in the United States. So you'll see snippets of that, or like Nürburgring 24 or Spa. You'll see certain things that are nationally televised on our local cable or satellite, whatever you may have. But most of it you got to follow online, or you got to follow through the virtual world streaming services. I'd say the culture, NASCAR, I'll say it like this, and I'll say pit crews. Like, we get asked all the time, like, why are we not in NASCAR? Well, look at your average NASCAR crew member. Most of those guys today are elite athletes who just miss making it through the NFL combine. They are that level of athlete, from college football into combine, and then they didn't make the cut for whatever reason. And it's just a different environment. NASCAR's got so much focus on it from a marketing perspective, televised perspective. There's a ton of money in NASCAR. Mm-hmm. That's why you see the Netflix specials, and you see all this stuff popping up now about following drivers, and they all live in these multi-million-dollar mansions and what have you. It's all marketing. It's like
guilty.
NFL.
Just binge watched it the other weekend.
Fine. Yeah, you don't see as many sports car racing guys doing that. Yeah. It's a different level of racing, but it's, again, I don't want to take away from the fact that it's the difference in culture. I would say is I can go and watch a sports car race, and I can look at a Porsche, I can look at a Mercedes, I can look at an Audi, I can look at a Ford Mustang, I can look at, and I'm a big Mustang guy, I can look at a Mini Cooper. Yep. And I can relate to those because I can go buy them on the showroom floor of my local dealership or in the used market. I can't go buy a NASCAR. I could go buy a NASCAR on like racingjunk.com, but I can't do anything with it unless it's going to turn it into a simulator or go take it to a track day.
Yeah.
The sports car racing world, I would say, is more relatable for your average person who's a car guy because they can touch it and feel it. And there's a lot of these race series too, the manufacturers of the race series themselves dictate what you can and cannot do to the car. And there's a lot of factory stuff that is used. Most of these manufacturers are using the racing program to help develop their road car. So there's a lot of similarities there. In my opinion, NASCAR, there's nothing OEM about a NASCAR other than it's carrying a label on it. And everything underneath that's all custom. F1, Indy, again, those aren't really, it's racing. It's great racing, but it's not relatable to what you can go and put in your driveway.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something that I find about the program that's appealing because, I want to see a vehicle that I could potentially drive, or maybe something. There's a lot of guys that collect and, save up their money to buy their dream car in the military. Yeah. Shout out to my buddy who's got a Shelby that he just sent me a picture of that's just insane. And I hate him for it, but those are the vehicles that I want to see.
Yeah.
But, and you brought something up that I wanted to ask you about the age of simulation racing. Like we're now seeing pro racers that got their start on iRacing. They got their start on Gran Turismo, and the rigs that I have seen that everyday service members are building to play a game, but now that line is blurring. Like you can become a really respected professional driver. Are you guys tapping into that?
We are. So we have two programs. I mentioned our motorsports immersion. That's kind of the in real world activation and engagement. Then we have our virtual world. It's under our motorsports league is using iRacing, and that falls under our diversionary therapy program. Now that program's been around for a couple of years now with us, but it was new during COVID when the racing world shut down. We had to find a way to still stay engaged and have something to do, right? And we just took a playbook out of what other people are doing in the motorsports world, and they switched more into virtual racing. You saw it with NASCAR, you saw it with SRO, you saw it with all kinds of different leagues or different series. So we just stole their idea and came up with our own and morphed it. I started that program. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. Had no idea what streaming was. I didn't know what Twitch was. I didn't know what Discord was. I didn't know like broadcasting. Like I tried to broadcast our first few races, and I've got a I've got a face for radio, but I've got a voice for, nothing. Because it's just the guys who can broadcast, they're really like, it's really cool how they approach it, how they apply their skill set to that environment. Something that's coming at you is always changing. You don't know what's going to happen, but you've got to stay on top of it to kind of help tell the story. So we got involved with that. It started off as a small test fire. Let's see if this thing will work. And then what we found, unbeknownst to us, it was a veteran community or a military community that we didn't even know existed. People like I had guys send me pictures of their first rigs, and it's like made of 2x4s and old ammo cans sitting in their barracks room, putting their race sim rig together, right? Because they don't have anything, they can't afford anything, but they want to go race on iRacing. And iRacing itself, it's a very powerful simulator, but it's a low barrier for entry. You don't need to have the best computer in the world to run it. You can run it on a laptop, with a good enough laptop, but most, you can run it as simply on a PC, a good sized computer screen, something like 27 plus inches is ideal or bigger. And then a pedal and wheel. That's all you really need. Now, you can also go spend like real racing. You can go spend as much money as you want and drop $10,000+ in all your equipment. Still cheaper than the real car, and you could crash it in iRacing and not have to worry about it. Just hit the reset button. But we started the league, and we tapped into this community of folks who weren't ready to come out of the safety of wherever they're at, their home, their basement, their game room, whatever it might be. And then we built this social network online to where the guys and gals get together on Tuesday nights on the 7:00 on the East Coast. So if you're on the West Coast, you got to adjust for that. But it's about a 2-hour opportunity to just decompress and forget about whatever the stresses are in your day-to-day life. Be with folks who have maybe not walked directly in your boots, but can relate. Every one of our participants, we run 3 classes of types of drivers. We run an open class, we run a pro class, and we run a beneficiary class. Our open class are just people who are veterans or military, who are not a part of our programs, but want to support, want to be a part of and be in that community, right? Our pro class are people with certain ratings in iRacing, because like the real racing world, everybody has a rating. So certain safety ratings, certain skill set, right? And then we have our beneficiary class, and that's our main focus. Our beneficiaries come to us who want to be involved, are part of our program. We're financially supporting them in some shape or fashion to be a part of I use iRacing. We haven't cracked the nut yet on how to get equipment. So if any of your listeners out there want to partner with us on putting sim racing gear into the hands of veterans and military folks who could benefit from that, please hit me up. I'd love to have that conversation. But these are our beneficiaries who are part of our programs. What we then found from doing this, and we run 2 seasons. We run 2 seasons a year. Each one's about 10 weeks, 8 races, about 10 weeks long. We then discovered that this actually started to give some of our folks the ability to go, okay, I'm in a safe space. I'm in a community that cares. I've got an organization that cares. Then they hear about motorsports immersion. And they go, I can take this kind of virtual world and now go to the real world of the stuff I'm doing online. Yeah, where do I sign up? And we saw a lot of catalyst with that became kind of a feeder program, if you will.
Yeah. And that's perfect. That is like the virtual world is great, and it gives you the confidence to talk a little bit more and to finally make that jump into the program, to get outside, to actually be involved with other people. And I love the power that we have on this digital community. We can connect with so many people, but at the end of the day, the greatest thing that we can do for our mental health, for our well-being, is to get outside and engage with other human beings in person. And that's a beauty. And kudos to you for developing that. That is a great thing to do. And I can only imagine the rates of people that probably have skyrocketed coming into the program through iRacing and then wanting to go in person.
Yes and no. I mean, it's ebbed and flowed. And let me back up. I ran the program. I wasn't strictly just my idea. It was a group effort by the foundation. I was just the guy to go, hey, Jason, go run it.
Go run it.
Okay, I'll figure it out. But again, sports car racing is a niche market, right?
Yep.
So again, you talked about being down there around Fayetteville. There's a ton of NASCAR fans in across the U.S., right?
Yep.
So your typical NASCAR fan doesn't always get into sports car racing. Well, we've seen the sports car racing guys, though, will go racing the other stuff. So they'll go on iRacing and go do the NASCAR stuff. They'll go do the dirt stuff or what have you. We actually want to expand, though, as we look at the program. We want to expand into other formats because at the end of the day, it's in the virtual world. The barrier for entry is lower.
Yep.
So it doesn't cost us as much other than time to go and explore other series. What we've also done, though, too, is we've partnered with other veteran programs, and Goat Locker Racing, for example, is one of them. Retired Navy chief, where we provide opportunities. We just share our programs and opportunities for people to jump from league to league to league to go do different things. So that's the other powerful thing that we've found too, is being able to partner with other veteran type organizations doing similar things. Because I don't need to reinvent the wheel if somebody else has already done it.
Exactly. Yeah, that is one of the most soft things ever. Stop trying to reinvent something. Search out the thing that already exists and make it work.
Or just steal it and don't tell anybody you stole it.
Hashtag using the iDrive. And real quick before we move on, how does somebody sign up and get involved?
Real easy, right? You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn. But the easiest way is go to operationmotorsport.org on our website. We've got, you hit our landing page, it goes two different ways. You've got a U.S. side and a Canadian side because we are an international organization. Mm-hmm. But go online, there's an interest form you fill out. That starts the process. Once you fill that out, you just you'll get in front of one of our beneficiary trustees. Again, veterans themselves, they'll have the conversation. What are your goals? Why did you apply? Why are you interested in applying? What is your time commitment? What can you do? What can't you do? What are your physical limitations? What are your maybe your mental health challenges if you have them? I mean, again, you're working, right? You're going to be a part of something. You're not just going to be there to observe. So we've got to figure out some of that so we know it's a good fit. And then you get the long application. We go more intrusive, like an SF-86 almost, and not quite that bad. So I don't want to scare anybody away. But again, what is your life like? What are your challenges? What are your goals? What are your desires? And then we start looking for how to partner you up with the right race team. What does right look like? And then even when you get in with that team, and if it's not a good fit, we can adjust. The teams that we work with, they just want to give back. They don't know how. They use us to figure out the how. We then help make the connection so it's a good fit. So the individual is mutually beneficial to the team, but it's also a mutually beneficial process or recovery, if you will, for the individual. We check in on every event. We have an event coordinator, so we have somebody there who is a veteran. And can help check on you, making sure, again, kind of taking care of soldiers, right? Are you eating? Are you sleeping? How do you feel today? What's going on, right? What are you doing? Again, kind of that health and welfare check, and help get you from point A to point B if needed, right? Because that first time you step into a paddock or you get off the flight, without that meet and greet there, you got to kind of be lost on what to do. Yep. So we have somebody there kind of help make the introductions and whatnot, and then we go from there. And then at that point, you're a part of the family. And racing is more expensive than drugs and more addictive. Once you're in it, it's you're not getting out of it, right?
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. It's always going to be in your blood.
Hell yeah! And now, man, I gotta ask, man. Tell me about your journey. Tell me about how do you go from young Jason enlisting to retiring and then finding your way in this industry.
Yeah, well, I was too dumb to go do anything else, most likely. But no, I think
same here.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I had to have a job with my name on my shirt. I got, the Army for me. I joined the Army in 1992. I came originally from Ohio, and the Army for me at that point was not really one of my options. I, like every other kid in the mid 80s, I saw Top Gun and Navy. I want to fly F-14 Tomcats. That's all I want to do. I have terrible eyesight, so those dreams soon dashed. And I got involved with the Army only because of a recruiter that took an interest in me, because I was working on a particular project for my school. And I learned at a very young age that if you want something, you've got to go after it and chase it. And I'll share a quick story you can't do today. My high school had a program called Science and Technology. And this particular program was a pilot program, and it was kind of a free-for-all. The student got to kind of choose what they wanted to focus on. And that was back during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So that was my interest. I always knew I'd go into the military. Like I said, aviation was my first love. It just didn't work out at the time. So I wanted to portray some of the challenges our service members faced. I had a cousin at the time in the Marine Corps in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. They're in Kuwait and in Iraq. What challenges they face. And if you remember, back then it was all chemical warfare.
Yep.
That was a big concern. So I decided I want to put on a mock thing in front of our school. We were doing a showcase, if you will, of this particular class to help get future students interested in, so the class could continue for years to come. So I decided I'm going to showcase the challenges our service members are facing in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and chemical warfare. So it's like, what do I need to do that? Well, I need chem suits. I need a radio. The whole premise was, team comes under attack. They've got X number of time, whatever, I don't remember what it was, to put all the your mask and then your biosuit on, and then they call in an airstrike to retaliate. So I went to our local Army recruiter and kind of gave him this idea, and he's like, okay, well, they're in Bowling Green, Ohio. There was a local armory, National Guard armory. They signed out. Again, this would never happen today. I don't know how the hell I pulled this off. They signed out 2 masks, 2 chem biosuits, a radio, and I don't remember what it was. It was well before the 117 Foxtrot. And get the 2 M16A1s.
Oh my God.
I walked into my high school with 2 M16A1s back in 1992. I had to keep them with me the entire time, right? But so I put this whole thing on. I had a flash pot that would mimic the attack, and then go through the process called airstrike. Now, for the airstrike piece, call it in, fake radio call, 17-year-old kid has no idea what radio call signs are, or what any of the proper comms procedures are. So I probably sound like more like Spokey and the Bandit, and walkie-talkies. But I contacted General Dynamics and told them my idea, what I wanted to do. They sent me a film of an F-16 on a bombing run, like out in the middle of New Mexico or something. So I had that playing on the screen in the background. So like this F-16 swooping in on a bombing range to drop the attack. Yeah. So it was really kind of cool. But that created the conversation. My dad was an Army guy. He was an Army veteran for a couple of years back during the Vietnam era. And for me, though, the Army just really didn't seem like an option, because I didn't really know anything about aviation back then and all this. So fast forward, recruiter starts that conversation. That starts the conversation. This guy brought me in. We talked. Aviation, boom, boom, boom. I was supposed to initially come in as a 93-foot PA, or flight operations specialist. Well, as soon as I graduate high school, I'm at a graduation party playing bat-ball in a pool, and a buddy of mine grabs me, pulls me underwater, and I twist to kick free, and my right knee either hit him in the head or the wall. I'm not sure which, but I came up with a broken kneecap. And worst pain of my life. I then had to get sent to orthoscopic surgery the day I was supposed to be leaving for basic training, kicked out of the late entry, all this and that. Yeah. So fast forward, I had to come through the whole process again. Now at the time, so I come back in a few months later, late entry, or go back to maps and all that, pick my job and whatnot. And at the time I was reading Tom Clancy books. And I said, a big military nerd. And I thought, I see these job offerings, right? We're going through all these with the recruiter. And I was like, what's this? This requires a top secret security clearance. The recruiter, he's like, I don't know what the hell that is, right? You remember the big laser discs They have it maps, right? He puts in a laser disc of like what the job is supposed to be or whatever. And I'm really dating myself here, I know. And he plays it. And it's like a couple of guys like going through a comm center or something or whatever. And it's like some spooky James Bond stuff. And it's signals intelligence analyst is what the job was. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I don't know what that is. Like, well, you got to stay over, take an extra test to see if you qualify for it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. All I saw was top secret security clearance. I thought that's got to be something worth something, because my dad always told me, hey, if you're going to go in the military, get a skill that's transferable. He was really big on the medical community, is what was his focus. But his big thing was, if you're going to get something, make sure it's transferable. Well, because I'm reading Tom Clancy novels at the time, I thought maybe I could be the next Jack Ryan, and I'll go to American University and be in DC and get my degree and all this kind of other nonsense. And so that's how I came into the Army. I was originally going to be a 4-year out guy, right? And go back probably to Ohio, go back to college or whatever. And then I get through my first assignment. I'm a 98 Charlie, signals intelligence analyst. And I'm at cryptanalysis school, which it's a school the Army no longer uses, but it's for code breaking. So I'm in Goodfellow Air Force Base in Texas, and I have orders for Fort Campbell is my follow-on. And I called my branch manager, and he says, hey, I'd like to go to 5th Group. And he said, nope, sorry, well filled up there. No allocations. He goes, what I can do, though, I think Altman was his name. He said, what I can do is I'll recut you orders to Fort Bragg. I'll give you airborne school in route. And you go to the 82nd, and then, your reenlistment window will be coming up here in a couple of years. You can reenlist for assignment of choice. And then I can give it to you the 3rd or 7th at Fort Bragg, since they're both there at the time. And I said, okay, cool. I get to airborne school, and everybody I saw with a soft patch, SF or USASOC, I'm asking them questions. How do I get there? I'm going to Fort Bragg, blah, blah, blah. And finally, I think some warrant, in typical warrant fashion, is screwing with me, right? He's like, you need to go talk to Sergeant Major Bone, the USASOC CSM. I'm an E4. I'm like, I don't even know who that person is, right? So he's like, if he can't help you, nobody can. I said, okay, cool. So at the time, my dad had an uncle who was a retired first sergeant out of the 82nd, living there in and around Fayetteville. And I was going to spend a couple of days with him before I signed in. So I get there. Back when you could find information in a phone book or whatnot, I called USASOC and I said, hey, I'm Specialist Leach. I've got orders to Fort Bragg. I'd like to set up an office call with Sergeant Major Bone. I'm interested in coming to one of the soft units there. And they're like, okay, cool. Be here tomorrow. When I tell this story, it sounds completely unbelievable, right? But this is how it happened. And so I show up. I get into USASOC. I check in at the front there, and I'm like, hey, tell me who I am, what I'm here for. Like, yeah, okay, hold on. Somebody from HR comes back, takes me back to the HR section, the S1 or whatever, and says, they call over to the replacement detachment on Fort Bragg and say, hey, we've got Specialist Leach here. We're keeping him. We're going to recut his orders, and we'll give you the next 98 Charlie we have on the books. So I screwed some guy, somebody I don't know. And what I learned from that, and I never met Sergeant Major Bone to this day, right? Never went in there. So I think it's one of the things, and at the time I didn't know, but how much is valued in SOF is that ability to problem solve and get to where you need to, or where you want to go, or where you need to be. And again, I didn't need to be an SF, but that's where I wanted to go. And I get assigned to 7th Group as a SOP guy. So I'm there. I meet some great guys, some folks I'm still friends with today. Do a couple deployments down to Panama and JRTC and stuff like that. But I was only at Fort Bragg for a short amount of time, like just over 2 years. And then at the time, I'm dating now my wife, Kim, who is up in Ohio, and she wants to get into national politics. And I thought, well, I can reenlist. Again, first assignment, first reenlistment, I get assignment of choice. I'll go to Fort Meade, Maryland. And I said, if I can't get you, between there and Fort Belvoir, I can't get you any closer to Washington, D.C. if we're going to have a life together and you want to pursue politics. So that's what started my ended up being a 28-year career was that first re-enlistment, and come up to Fort Meade. I do a couple years at a national level agency, and then got exposed to other soft programs, and that's what started me off on that track where I spent 22 years inside of the organizations in and around this area.
Yeah. Just by being bold enough and daring enough to make a phone call.
Dude, you gotta chase your dreams, right? And again, I think that's such an inherent skill set of those who last and are successful in soft. That they have that ability to go, how do I overcome this? Again, there's no rule saying I couldn't do what I wanted to do, but it wasn't the norm.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you they say think outside the box or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of that term personally, but yeah, just how do you get to where you need to be or where you want to be? Because you've got to own your own journey. And I applied that for the rest of my career. I applied that to my transition as well.
And speaking directly to your transition, when it came time to retire, that's identity, purpose, and mission. That's a hard thing for everybody to come to terms. How did you navigate that? Understanding that you lived this entire career, this entire life, identifying with the uniform, with being that warrior within the organization. What were some of the things that you did to make sure that you took off the uniform and then addressed the identity piece? Because that's something that's so important for every veteran.
Yeah. I guess a couple things there. One, I learned early on in my career. Well, not early on in my career. I mean, we all went through, I went through an assessment selection like a lot of guys did, right? I got into a very specific organization. I had to be revalidated every year or so. Am I still value added to the mission? Am I more valuable today than I was yesterday type thing? And some of my former teammates may argue I overstayed my welcome, but, my value added is a sliding scale, but, it was, that train keeps going once you get off of it. It has to. No one of us is so valuable to the mission that it's going to stop because we're no longer there. And, my pinnacle position inside the organization, I was a brigade S3 sergeant major, which I loved. I loved being at that level and having that level of influence, especially when the unit I was in, we had a lot of tab guys, and I was not a tab guy, right? I had to go through our assessment selection just like anybody else, but listen, let's be honest, there is a difference in thinking culture, and there is a little bit of that tower of power versus those who don't have it, right? It doesn't make those who don't have it any less valuable. They just took a different route in their career.
Exactly.
But there is those, unfortunately, there's the haves and have-nots to some extent within that community. And it tends to lessen when you actually work with somebody. Yeah. But if you don't know them, sometimes it's that first judgment. But anyways, but I learned that the train's going to continue whether I'm on it or not. So right after I gave up my brigade operations sergeant major position, I went into an L&O position, and then COVID hit. And prior to that, my position that I filled was critical. That was essential personnel. Like, you're on the, I'm going to again age myself. You're on the pager. You're on the beeper. You're getting the call at 2 a.m. Funny thing, real quick. I have 3 daughters. I used to change my ringtone for that call to the Death Star March, the Imperial March, right? And it would go off at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays or Thursdays. And my daughter's like, "Dad, the Death Star's calling," but it was my own way of going, okay, if this thing goes off at 2 a.m, it's not somebody drunk dialing me or butt dialing me or something. This is real. This is real shit. This is something. I got to get up for this. I was in a critical position. And then I went into this L&O position, then COVID hit, and I was told, don't come to work. Stay home. Yeah. You're not in that critical essential personnel position anymore. And that was hard. That was a wake up call. That was like, hey, Jason, no shit. Your career is coming to an end, and you have to now take that next step. Prior to that, I had also, how I got in the motorsports game or focus was through the Commit Foundation. I went and attended one of their workshops. And I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with the Commit Foundation. But I pitched my elevator pitch, motorsports. That's where I want to be, unconstrained, undenied. And, on day 2, when you're around the cohort and you're talking to the people who are supposed to help make the network, help make the connections, whatever, the majority of it was, Jason, that's an awesome story. We don't know anybody in that world. So good luck.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, right. So again, that was another wake-up call to go, I have to own my journey. I have to own this if this is where I want to end up.
Yes.
Right. I'd done some driving stuff, like, again, a bunch of schools. I was a high performance driving instructor here in the Mid-Atlantic area for a couple of years, had my own car and stuff like that. All of that had gone away because my military career, my family was taking a bit of priority. And again, racing's expensive. But I got back home and I started getting on LinkedIn and Facebook and looking at things and doing my own research. So there's 2 stories here. One, I was already following a Mustang. I told you I'm a Mustang guy. I was already following a Mustang team in sports car racing, IMSA, an organization called Core Motorsports. And every time I saw their car, they had an American flag on the roof, and they always had a 9/11 memorial of some sort. So that told me they're veteran friendly, or there's a veteran connection, or there's something there that I don't know about. So I wrote D. Martin an email in 2019, January 2019, right after Daytona. Or right before Daytona maybe, and said, hey, this is who I am. This is my background. I already kind of thought there would probably be a parallel between military operations and motorsport.
Yeah.
Small team dynamics, working left to your right, blah, blah, common goal, all that good stuff. So I said, I'll volunteer for Mid-Ohio, Watkins Glen, and VIR on your schedule. Fund my own way. I'll come out. And those tracks are all within relative driving distance of where I live. And Dean said, yep, come on out. And I said, awesome. I said, I just want a chance to see if this could be a good fit. I started listening to podcasts. And then right before, so my first event was going to be Mid-Ohio in June. Now my dad lives outside of Mid-Ohio in Ohio. So I was going to stay with him. So lodging was nothing, cheap to eat in Ohio. And I was driving myself. So I had not heard back from Dean though for a long time. And because I had no details, like when do I show up? Where do I go? Blah, 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 nothing.
No 5 W's.
No 5 W's, right? Yeah. I don't know what my hit time is. And I at the time I was also researching parallel, and I found Operation Motorsport online. And I read their mission statement: medically retired, wounded, ill, injured service members. I'm like, okay, well, I reached out to them. I said, hey, I'm not the beneficiary you're looking for because I wasn't being medically released. I didn't have a VA rating at the time, so I didn't know. Like, I'm not their customer, if you will.
Yeah.
But I wanted to learn more about their program. I want to learn more about the space that they're in because I'm interested in them. And then they wrote back and said, great, we're in the middle of race season right now. We'll get back to you. And I come back, I decide I've not heard from Dean. And it's like a day before the race. I'm like, I still got a place to stay. I still have access. And the thing about sports car racing that's different from other series, you can walk right into the garages where the teams are at. You get up close with the teams, right? I mean, it's their work environment. You want to be respectful, but you can get almost right into the action. So I thought, you know what? I'll just go and I'll see what I can see. I'll see if I can make my own introductions or make my own way or just make connections that might lead to something else. And like 7:00 that night, I figure I'll get up. Let's say it's a Monday. I don't remember what day it was. Or Tuesday. It's probably a Tuesday. I'll get up on Wednesday and I'll leisurely make my way out to Ohio. And Dean finally emails me Tuesday, like at 7:00 at night. I think I shot him an email a couple days before. I'm like, hey, dude, if you still want me, I'm available. And he finally emails me like 7:00 at night or something. Yep, be here tomorrow at this time at this place. Like 7 a.m. in Ohio. Mid-Ohio for me is about a 6+ hour drive. And or maybe it was 9 a.m. And I'm like, okay, it is like 7:00 at night. I now have to get up and leave here about 3:00 a.m. to make it out there. But I'm committed. This is what I want to try to do, right? So I said, hey, cool, I'll go. I get in with Dean. I get in with the team. Great guy. John Sandy, one of the guys I first met was a guy by the name of John Sandy. Not a vet. He was the roof rider I mentioned earlier. But he kind of took me under his wing and said, kind of help guide me and show me a little bit in the paddock. And Dean's team is all great. I mean, that team is awesome. Everybody in there, they're open arms, didn't see me as a threat to anything. I told a little bit of my story. They're like, yeah, come on in, be a part of the team. Well, unbeknownst to me, Core had a relationship already with Operation Motorsport. Core had hosted previous beneficiaries. I had no idea about that. Never saw anything on social media, didn't catch it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I'm in the paddock, I'm in the garage, and we're in the paddock and we're getting the car ready. Like, yeah, talk about being a private again, right? Dean gave me Dean gave me a bottle of cleaner and a rag. He's like, go wipe that car down. I'm like, okay, I could do
Roger
more,
that.
but it was that check. It was like, okay, this is a new team. They don't know me. I've never worked with these guys before. They don't know my background. They don't know my experience. I now have to, again, re-earn my ability to be a part of this team, right? I've got to show value add. Otherwise, I'm going to get dismissed. And let's be honest, much like soft, your perception, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with words now. Your personality, your attitude precedes you. Your value precedes you, right? And I don't care if you're on, this team over here. If you're a shitbag, this team over here is going to hear about it. At one shape or fashion, because it's such a small community. Sports car racing is the same way. Your reputation precedes you. That's what I was trying to say. So so I'm in the paddock and I'm just wiping car down, right? And granted, it's the most expensive Mustang I had ever been around, but and this one guy walks in with an IMSA uniform on, red polo, black pants, right? And I hear him talking, and he's talking about jumping out of airplanes. I'm like, oh, he's a veteran, right? So let me go introduce myself again. I don't know where this will go. Hey, I'm Jason. I'm still serving. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I heard you talk about jumping out of airplanes. I jump out of airplanes. Blah blah blah. He's like, well, what do you jump on? Or how many jumps do you have? You're right. I'm like, and I was just a static line guy. My eyes kept me from being able to go free fall. And I said I got like 100 jumps, which depending on where you're at in your career is a lot in static line, or or not. It didn't really matter, but that's about what I had. And he goes, oh, I've got like 5,000 or something. Like, oh, he's a free fall guy.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be a dick measuring contest, but okay. And we get to talking, and it turns out his name's Diesel Lauder. And as we're talking, he said, have you heard of Operation Motorsport? I said, yeah. In fact, I found them online like yesterday or last week. I emailed them and said, hey, we'll get back to me, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, who did you talk to? I'm like, I don't know, somebody named Tiffany. He's like, hold on. He walks out. He walks back in with this woman, and I said, hi, my name's Jason. He's like, this is Tiffany. I'm like, oh, hi, my name's Jason. I emailed you last week. And she's like, what the hell are you doing here? I'm like, well, I can open my own doors, right? I can find things when I want to go. But that's what really started the relationship. What they were doing at the time, they still do to some extent, is they use their business is doing fan engagement, pit tours, hospitality, hot laps, things like that. Well, our race ended on Saturday. I ended up staying on Sunday, and Tiffany and I hung out, and she just told me more about the programs. Diesel took me and just told me more about the programs, and that's what really led to my involvement with Operation Motorsport. So it was taking advantage of an opportunity when it presented itself, or what could be a potential opportunity, not realize. Now, what I will say, there were a couple of lessons I learned from that too, that I would tell all your military members who are out there who are listening. If you don't know what's next for you, that's fine. But go get yourself involved in the veteran space, or go get yourself involved in a nonprofit space, right? Whatever your passion is, wherever your interest is, right? If it's taking care of homeless vets, if it's taking care of underprivileged kids with cancer, whatever it might be, right? Go give back in that fashion. Because here's what I would tell you. Here's what it did for me, at least. One, I learned more. I got involved with Atmo in 2019. I retired, I guess, end of 2021. End of 2020. So about 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Total at the time. I learned more about marketing and business and salesmanship and engagements and telling the story of the organization that carried me further in my private life than my military career did. And I say that because the majority of people we interface with did not serve or have not served.
Yep.
right? So it's unrelatable when you talk about just your military skills and your background and your information. So this allowed me to still be a part of the veteran community, still part of giving back and helping other service members, which I think as senior leaders, we all learn how to do. But I was able to talk about different aspects of successes that weren't directly tied to the military. And that I think resonated a lot and gave me a lot of opportunity once I got out. So one, go give back. Second, just chase your dream, right? I'm still a volunteer with the organization. I am not compensated for my time. But I still believe enough in the program that I kind of work it for free now. And I'll continue to do so for the foreseeable future.
And Jason, thank you so much, man. One of the things that I want to reiterate in a lot of these episodes where we've explored what people have been doing after the military, after service, the thing that resonates and continues to connect the dot is you took ownership of that next chapter and you put yourself out there and you went looking for the opportunities. None of these things will just, well, for some it might just land on your lap, but stop being scared and be willing to go out there to look for that opportunity, for that thing that you're excited about. Go out there and seize the opportunity.
That's you got to be willing to ask for help too. I mean,
yes,
I to this day, I had a conversation. I'll probably have this conversation later on today with an individual, soft retired guy who wants to get into racing as a driver, and a former colleague of mine, a former teammate of mine down in Fayetteville, connected us yesterday on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, if Jason's in that world, go talk to him. Maybe he can help you." Right? And maybe I can, but if I can't, I'm already thinking in my head, I know 4 or 5 other people I can connect them with. Right? And that's what it's all about.
Awesome. And before we go, Jason, again, what are the social media handles for the Operation Motorsport, and where can people go to find out more information?
Yeah, so the main site, operationmotorsport.org, our website's the easiest one. And then you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn, X, Instagram. We're not on TikTok yet. I think that's an age thing. But yeah, generally that's where we're on Discord. So if there's any gamers out there that want to get involved, you can find us on Discord. And listen, I'll give my email address so if people want to get in touch with me directly. Jason.Leach, Leach at operationmotorsport.org.
There you go, folks. Jason, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for what you and Operation Motorsport are doing and being able to advocate and connect veterans and medically retired individuals into something that's engaging, fun, and fucking awesome.
It is. Come join us, man. Denny, thank you so much. I'm glad we connected at the conference, and thank you for what you're doing in helping organizations like mine, but just other veterans tell their stories to help educate and inform those who are coming behind us or who might be struggling today, that there's help out there if you need it.
Hell yeah. We didn't make it through our military careers by ourselves. We had a platoon, we had a team, we had an ODA. We get through this together. So please take care of each other. And until next time, take care, everybody. And we'll see you all in the next episode.